Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Happy New Year to all you Steelers fans and Steeler Nation. With me as always is Austin Davidson from Long Island, New York.
Heyo!
Today we're going to be wrapping up the Steelers' regular season as their last game was another victory, this time in overtime against the 1-15 Cleveland Browns. It was dramatic yet unspectacular, another come-from-behind win, this time led by Landry Jones and several backups. This game was kind of a mess early on, wouldn't you say, Austin?
Yeah, it was not good. The Redskins. The Browns started off really quickly. They were up 14-0 and almost went up 21-0.
You are right. The Steelers' offense had no success early, netting just 5 total yards in their first 3 drives. The defense was spotty at best, giving up 2 early passing touchdowns to Robert Griffin III. Those were his first 2 since 2014. And with the game in danger of becoming an early blowout, with the Browns in the red zone again, Ryan Shazier picked off a Robert Griffin pass. They kept the score at 14-0. The Browns' next possession lasted just 1 play. It was a bad snap that led to a Steelers recovery in Cleveland territory late in the first half. The Steelers managed to get a touchdown from D'Angelo Williams, who caught a dump-off pass, broke a tackle, and lunged over the goal line for the Steelers' only touchdown of the first half. At 14-7, you really felt like the Steelers were lucky to have scored at all. But the second half was a different story, despite the fact that it also started in poor fashion, similar to the first half. Landry Jones threw an interception midway through the third quarter, but this is where the game changed. After having gained 24 yards on the drive, Jones threw the pick. It was intercepted by, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Austin, so correct me if I'm wrong, but Burian Body Calhoun?
That's how you say it.
That's how you say it? Okay. So he picked off the pass, I think, somewhere deep in Cleveland territory, and he returned it to the 1-yard line as he was reaching over to put the ball over the goal line. Darius Heyward-Bey, making a great effort on the play, came across the field and actually poked the ball out right before it crossed the goal line. Landry Jones was alert enough to cover the ball for a clear recovery, even though the play was ruled a touchdown. After review, it was ruled that Body Calhoun did, in fact, fumble before he crossed the goal line, and the Steelers got a touchback. So I don't know if you've ever seen a play like that before. I certainly never have before. But it gave the Steelers a new life, and 10 plays later, they scored a touchdown. It was D'Angelo Williams again with his second of the day, this one on the ground. The Steelers got a combined 102 yards from that elongated drive with that pick that set the Steelers back. It was certainly an interesting phenomenon that, to me, couldn't have been more Cleveland Browns, if you ask me. Then, after that, the teams traded touchdowns, but late in the fourth quarter, the Browns were in good position to run out the clock deep in Steelers territory and kick a field goal. But on the 2-yard line, Isaiah Crowell fumbled, and the Steelers recovered. This was another critical Browns flop, and the Steelers ended up sitting on the ball and waiting for overtime, which, ironically enough, was probably the last thing any Steelers fan wanted, because as we mentioned all week going into this game, this game had no impact on the Steelers' playoff spot or anything outside of this week. So the Browns won the toss and received the ball and drove the ball downfield and were again at the Steelers' 2-yard line and couldn't score a touchdown. Instead of just taking a 2 or 3 yard loss, I don't remember who caught it. I didn't write it down, but a quick flare pass to the Browns receiver, and he kept trying to make a big play out of nothing and lost 12 yards, and the Browns just couldn't make it up. The drive resulted in a field goal, and the Steelers responded by driving the length of the field for the win. After converting a 4th down and short, Landry Jones hit a deep ball to Kobe Hamilton for the walk-off win, and the Steelers walked away as victors for the 11th time this season. The Browns finished their worst season since the modern era and clinched the number 1 pick in the draft. What were your thoughts about this game, Austin?
takeaways from it is that Heyward-Bey and Kobe Hamilton can take over for the deep ball. They only combined for 5 catches together, and that's like a little bit of a lying stat because it wasn't like 2 or 3. It was Kobe Hamilton caught 4 and Heyward-Bey caught 1. But they both caught a ball on a key streak route, which is just running straight down the field, and that's it. You just run straight forward. But Hamilton's was to end overtime on a 23-yard touchdown reception. Heyward-Bey was a giant 46-yard gain. And basically, this is good. This is why we wanted Darius Heyward-Bey back. We wanted someone to take over what Sandy Copes was doing before Week 5. And Heyward-Bey did it. He got 1 catch for 46 yards. And Kobe, if you want to count 23-yard as a long one, Kobe Hamilton did one too.
It's an explosive play, so yeah, it should count.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. It's explosive. You need those big plays. And then that also led me to think that I wish Coach had a little bit more on his resume, kind of like Dorial Green-Beckham, who was a little he didn't have enough on his resume, but it's early in his career. But I would say that the Steelers should trade him, but he's probably not worth much at this point. It's kind of sad. He still has 1 more year on his rookie contract, so I really don't like Coach. There was no reason for me to write about him here, but I was just thinking about that after the deep passing game was working out a little bit more.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you could go.
I know you're not his biggest fan, but with how hard it is to trade players in the NFL today, along with the fact that he does have that one last year left, it wouldn't surprise me if he does come back, and I think he will play better next year. Whether or not he becomes the player we thought he could be or the player he looked like he was becoming early on in the year, that's a whole nother story, but at the same time, hopefully the Steelers are going to have Martavis Bryant back, and they'll have hopefully at least a couple other of these young receivers in the mix too. So it's not like it matters if he doesn't become that, but he will have another chance, I believe.
I honestly hope not, but okay. Continuing on, my second takeaway from this game was that the Browns lost this way more than the Steelers won this. The Browns fumbled 4 times, losing 3 of them, including what you talked about would have been a pick 6, but in the most Browns fashion ever. He fumbled into the end zone for a touchback, and then just, you know how it went. The Steelers drove back for a touchdown on that next possession. They also missed a 49-yard field goal just to continue to kick themselves while they were down. What were your takeaways from this game?
Well, starting with the offense, it certainly wasn't the prettiest game either of us have ever witnessed. Being at the stadium midway through the first half, you could definitely hear a lot of the boo birds as the fans were pretty upset. Not a large crowd either. Only, I think they announced 55,000, which was like the 8th smallest crowd at Heinz Field ever for an NFL game. But I thought it was kind of hard to evaluate the offense when 4 of its best players weren't playing. You could tell early on that the offensive line just wasn't into the game. It had no impact on the postseason picture, and as you could hear in the post-game interviews, particularly with David DeCastro, you could tell that they had some difficulty preparing for this game and attempting to go all out for it when they knew that it really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So I'll credit the offense for battling back and playing better as the game went on and winning the game ultimately. But that poor first half performance was just not, it wasn't pretty to watch even in the grand scope of the game. Defensively, however, even though they played maybe a little bit better than the offense as a whole, it was definitely a lot more concerning for me because most of the starters played and most of them played the entire game, but they struggled a lot at times against the Browns. Particularly against the run, giving up over 200 yards and over 100 for the second week in a row. It's not a good trend to be going on, especially when the Dolphins come into town and Jay Ajayi will be looking to duplicate his 200-yard performance against the Steelers from earlier this year. Again, I know it's not a really meaningful game, but it's also something you wanted to see the Steelers play better with, especially considering they were playing the Browns. The biggest thing I took away from this game was injuries. The Steelers only suffered 2 injuries, but they were to a position group where the Steelers could simply not afford to have another injury, and that's a defensive line group. A group that has exhausted its depth already, endured 2 more as Ricardo Matthews re-aggravated his ankle injury from earlier this year, and Javon Hargrave was entered into concussion protocol for the second time this year. Luckily, he passed and played 1 more series before leaving. I think him leaving the game was more of a precautionary thing, but I am concerned about the health of Ricardo Matthews and obviously Stephon Tuitt, who didn't play. He has said that he is definitely going to play this week, and he could have played this week if he needed to. Obviously, he didn't need to, but I am concerned about that defensive line group, particularly over their play the last couple of weeks. Who stood out to you in this game for the Steelers on offense and defense?
Let me see. One of our favorite players, actually, Jarvis Jones. He recorded his first sack of the season, which was better late than never, I suppose. He also got a forced fumble and a pass breakup, along with a tackle for a loss. And I think he knew what he was playing for. And this last game really helped his resume a bit for other teams, maybe the Steelers. But I think Jarvis Jones had a really good game. What do you think?
He may have saved his future NFL career. We'll see what he does for the rest of the season if he continues to play. But it was nice. I remember seeing that play. I was actually watching Jarvis Jones, not like the entire time, but after the ball was snapped, I kind of saw Jones getting the rush going, and I thought, wow, he might get a sack here. And sure enough, he did, and I just kind of just slapped my thigh like, really? Are you kidding me? He gets one now? But, like you said, it's better late than never. Based on the way the defense played, I wrote down that I wasn't going to give anybody really any props for the way they played because you already covered Jarvis Jones, but I wanted to get to one man in particular for his work in the pass rush, and that's Big Daniel McCullers, number 93, the largest man selected in the draft a couple of years ago. He really has struggled against the run and did so again on Sunday, but he got his first career NFL sack in what was really amazing fashion. Just a clean beat the center, and I remember seeing this. He just kind of jumped at RG3, expecting him to pass, trying to knock it down. RG3 held onto it, and Dan kind of just like jumped and fell into him and kind of just knocked him down. It was kind of funny to watch, but it's definitely nice to see him doing something I never thought he was going to be able to do, and that's rush the passer, especially considering it's a mobile quarterback back there in Robert Griffin III. On offense, I wanted to put the spotlight on DeMarcus Ayers, and I know that's the player you wanted to talk about too, so I'll kind of keep this brief. But I think, well, actually, I got 2 players, but I wanted to just talk about DeMarcus Ayers real quick before you talked about him. But watching from the stands, it was clear to me that he didn't have an amazing game, but the last couple of weeks seeing him play for the first time, it doesn't look like he's a rookie 7th-round pick to me. He has his flaws, but he looks like he's a polished player, and it's definitely nice to see him get his first career NFL touchdown. Last guy I wanted to get to was Fitzgerald Toussaint. The stats aren't going to tell the whole story, but in the brief amount of touches he got, it seems clear to me that he's a pretty good player, and he's not going to be an explosive player, but he looked comfortable and serviceable as the number 3 running back behind D'Angelo Williams and Le'Veon Bell. He may be the best number 3 running back in the league, at least in my opinion. I mean, I don't know the running back depth that other teams have, maybe like the Patriots, but something that Toussaint does really well that I think is an underrated aspect is that he's a really good pass blocker. I saw a couple of times during the game where it looked like Landry Jones was going to be having to rush a throw, and he just made a great block on an incoming linebacker or safety. So that's really something that's underrated about running backs, even if he isn't the fastest guy in the world or the most elusive guy. Who on offense, you wanted to talk about DeMarcus Ayers, right?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about DeMarcus Ayers. It was really all the wide receivers minus Sammy Coates that I wanted to talk about because they all did really well since Antonio Brown wasn't playing. And I like that, but I wanted to focus on DeMarcus Ayers because he caught 5 catches, and it wasn't like the most monster yardage. I think it was only 44 yards, if I remember correctly. But but I just like the way he plays. He plays with so much enthusiasm. I don't know if it's just because he really wants to be on the roster or that's just how he plays. But it's really nice to see. He gets involved on plays that he doesn't need to. He, like you said, he blocks a lot. He was doing a lot of pass blocking, right? Mm-hmm. And he just does it. He gets involved in plays that he doesn't have to. Even last week, I don't think we talked about it, but on one of Le'Veon Bell's touchdowns last week, he put on a block on one of the defensive backs that could have stopped him, and Le'Veon Bell ran right behind him. I like what he brings. I like the enthusiasm, and I just like what he brings to the table. That's it. And I hope he's done enough to fight for a roster spot next season, assuming we don't see much of him in the playoffs. I mean, he could possibly come in, but I don't imagine him getting that much playing time in the playoffs.
I like to see him a little bit, even if it's just situational stuff. Circling to the other side of the equation, who are you most concerned about, whether it's a player or position group, since we just talked about who impressed you? Who disappointed you this week?
Ooh, the offensive line. The offensive line was not good this week. We expect the line to change a bit later, but it was all starters besides the center position, which was played by BJ Finney. So all starters besides BJ Finney. The offensive line gave up 4 sacks, which is awful for how they've been playing. The Steelers would have had the lowest amount of sacks given up in franchise history, but the line's bad day or soiled it. I think they went over by 1 sack or 2. I think the record was 20, and I think they got to 22 on the season given up. Not to mention that Ramon Foster got his first penalty of the season in this game. It would just seem so weird, just the last game against the Browns, but okay. And then also, stop me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe any of the sacks came up the middle, a.k.a. none of them were Finney's fault. So this is worrying, seeing as the rest of the line were starters, and all of the sacks came from the starters. So
I'm not positive if that's true, but I'm gonna blame a little bit of this. At least one of the sacks I know for sure. I'm gonna blame on Landry Jones, simply because there was a blitz called. Whoops, sorry, I had a video playing. Let me mute my computer. Had a blitz called, and he didn't opt out of the play, and I think that's something that Landry Jones has just got to be. He's got to be more aware as a quarterback. Here, I'm watching this. You know, what I noticed is that a lot of those sacks early on, one of the sacks he took in the fourth quarter was up the middle, but a lot of these sacks were kind of jailbreak blitzes now that I'm seeing them. I remember early on the Browns were just blitzing a lot of people. That's something that, yeah, the offensive line did a really good job with the last couple weeks. They should have played a little better, but at the same time, I'm also going to pin a little bit of it on Landry Jones. I'll pin at least one on him for not being able to get rid of the ball a little bit faster or not changing the play. But I do believe you have a good point with the offensive line. And
what is your positional group that you're worried about?
I was concerned about the defensive line. I already talked about this a little bit with the whole, nothing to play for. But in some respects, I think you look at the defensive line, I think those guys had a lot to play for. Most of those guys, maybe outside of Javon Hargrave, don't have roster spots guaranteed past this season. I like Isaiah Crowell, but this game, to me, was a great opportunity for these guys to sort of improve their play and sort of work out any of the little problems that they might have had. But they really didn't do that good of a job against the run. Crowell and RG3, just particularly Crowell, had lots of open space. The Steelers missed some tackles, and I didn't feel great watching the defensive line, even though I knew the situation of the game. It does have me concerned, particularly because of what Jay Ajayi did. Yeah, it was a long time ago, but it still happened. It's still something that has me concerned as someone who's covering the Steelers right now. You had something here talking about the NFL coaching carousel, if you will. Today or yesterday was Black Monday, one of the most well-known or infamous days in the NFL where a lot of coaches get fired. You pointed out that Todd Haley is a candidate to end up somewhere else potentially. Do you think Todd Haley is going to end up coaching somewhere else next year?
See, I was reading because it made me worried. I was reading some articles saying that the Steelers don't, it's per usual, but the Steelers don't announce whether someone's asked to interview one of their coaches, and it leaves it to the other team, which made me think that somebody did try talking to Todd Haley or is trying to, and I think if he's offered a head coaching position again, he'll take it. Ben Roethlisberger said he should be a head coach again earlier on in the season, and that's a big opportunity to pass up, especially given the pay increase. So I think he would take a head coaching job. However, if someone offers him another offensive coordinator position, I believe he's just staying in Pittsburgh. I don't think he would leave for just another offensive coordinator position. I think he likes it in Pittsburgh, regardless of some of the criticism he's gotten. But I think he'd stay. What do you think?
Hashtag fire Haley, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rare for fans in Pittsburgh to like their offensive coordinator. I wrote down stuff that I was kind of based on my gut, and after researching, I'm gonna kind of change my stance a little bit. I didn't think that Todd Haley was kind of someone that was being kind of looked at for a head coaching position. I knew it was always a possibility, but I figured he the last few years he's been saying that he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh as an offensive coordinator. Well, it seems like maybe his stance has changed. You're definitely right, I believe, that he's not going to leave Pittsburgh for another offensive coordinator position. Pittsburgh is his home. He grew up in Pittsburgh. He was the Steelers' ball boy back in the 1970s. For those who don't know this, his dad was the equipment manager for the Steelers. He actually went to my mom's high school and graduated with my aunt, so they don't know him that well personally, but at the same time, Pittsburgh is his home, and I think it's going to have to take a head coaching vacancy for Todd Haley to want to leave. That being said, I don't know if it's dependent on the type of job, whether it's, Denver or if it's Buffalo that he'd end up going, but I also wanted to point out that Mike Munchak, the Steelers' offensive line coach, is a former head coach for the Tennessee Titans as well. I think he's also a potential future coordinator or head coach somewhere else, whether that's this year or a few years down the road. I think those are the two guys you want to look out for. If you had to ask me right now whether or not he was going to leave or stay, I'm going to say he's staying for right now, just because Pittsburgh is his home, like I was saying, but that obviously doesn't mean it can't change, especially if his thoughts on wanting to leave Pittsburgh could have changed recently within the past year. So, Austin, the NFL regular season is over, which means the playoffs start next week, and we now know what the seedings are and who's going to have to go through where to make the Super Bowl. That being said, just a quick overview of the playoffs in the AFC. The Patriots and Chiefs have the first round byes, and the matchups are as follow. You have the Raiders at Texans on Saturday, and the Dolphins at Steelers on Sunday. And on the NFC side, you have the Cowboys and Falcons with the first round byes, and you have the Giants at Packers and Lions at Seahawks for the other two games. If there's a favorite, a team to watch for, and a one and done in each conference, who are they, Austin?
I'll start with the favorites for each. The Patriots are the favorites for the AFC. I don't think anyone saw any differently before the start of the season. I'm pretty sure most predictions early on were for the Patriots to make the Super Bowl again. I mean, some had Pittsburgh, I would say, but no, I didn't see any other teams in the beginning of this making the AFC besides Patriots or Steelers. But as long as Bill Belichick is the coach, you could basically expect at least an AFC championship appearance from them. He had an 11-5 team with Matt Castle. Like, it's unfair. Bill Belichick is unfair. Then switching to the other side of things, the favorite is going to be the Cowboys, but I'm not sure that that will last. If the Giants get to move on in the playoffs, I don't know if they'll be able to beat them after losing them twice already this year, but who knows? I'll say that the Cowboys are the favorites. Who are your favorites?
Well, I have the exact same as you. I think it's pretty obvious in the AFC, as it has been most of the year. It's the Patriots and everybody else. Their record since Tom Brady's become the quarterback, it can't be ignored. They routinely make the AFC Championship game. They routinely win playoff games, and it's no accident. They've got a future Hall of Famer, if not one of the best ever at quarterback. You've got a bruising running back with LeGarrette Blount, and you've got a good offense that has a great quarterback, and that's a deadly combination alone. But something that's being overlooked a lot is how good the Patriots' scoring defense has been. They don't force a lot of turnovers, but they've been playing well. And statistically, they gave up less points per game this season than the Denver Broncos, who won the Super Bowl last season, did, just to give you a little bit of perspective there. And the Patriots just so rarely lose at home. And you have to they have to be licking their chops. It's almost like they have 2 bye weeks in a row. They'll be playing the winner of the Texans and Raiders matchup, and we can get to that in a little bit. But I think it's going to take either the Chiefs or the Steelers to upset them, and we can cover that again later in the week. But that's my favorite on the AFC side. The NFC side, I also have the Cowboys simply because they earned it based on the way they played in the regular season. 13 wins and 3 losses. They quite simply have, in my opinion, the best offensive line in football. They have one of, if not the best running backs in football in Ezekiel Elliott, who's only a rookie. And, of course, they have Dak Prescott, the rookie quarterback. The thing that will make me hesitate based on their ability to get to the Super Bowl is their defense. Yeah, it has had an improved pass rush as of late, but I'm also concerned simply because of the rookie factor in playoffs. True, Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott haven't played like traditional rookies, but it's so rare for rookies and young players to play well in the playoffs because it's not like the regular season where you might play a tough team once or twice in a 6-week span or something like that, or a 4-week span even. Now you're going to be playing the best of the best in your conference, and that might be a little bit tougher. I still think they're worthy of the favorite position. I still think there's a good chance they'll make the Super Bowl, but I'm more convinced that the Patriots are the overwhelming favorite in that conference as opposed to the NFC. Who's your one team to watch or the scary team in each conference that you're looking out for, Austin?
I'm going to pick the Chiefs for the AFC. They're one of the only 2 teams in the playoffs with potential to knock off the Patriots before the Super Bowl. I mean, I guess it could be 3 if you assume that the Dolphins can make it, but it's not like I don't think the Dolphins are good enough. I would think it would just be a wacky divisional game that they were able to win it. But besides that, there's only 2 teams with good caliber, to put it, that could actually beat them. That, like on paper, I could say these players are better than that players. The other being Pittsburgh, but I'll pick the Chiefs. And then in the NFC, the team to look out for, I couldn't pick one. It was really hard because I wanted to pick the Packers, but I also wanted to keep in mind the Giants because only one team will move on out of both of them since they verse each other in the wild card round. But both teams have something good going on about them. The Packers come into this game 6-0 after Rodgers claimed that the Packers would run the table, and they've done exactly that. They are one of the hottest teams coming into the postseason and a force to be reckoned with right now. For the Giants, what's good about them, I already mentioned this earlier, they've taken on the Super Bowl favorite twice. If they are able to move on past Green Bay, and if Seattle beats Detroit, the Giants go into Dallas, and this could be bad news for Dallas. Dallas probably doesn't want to see the Giants. So I couldn't just pick one since the Packers are super hot, but if the Giants can move on, the Giants are going to be super hot as well. Who are your teams to watch?
Before I get to that, I can tell you that not only do the Giants not want to see the Giants, not only do the Cowboys not want to see the Giants win, the Patriots also don't want to see the Giants.
Yep.
I'm sure they're sick of seeing the Giants in the Super Bowl. And on the AFC side, the Chiefs present an interesting matchup for the Patriots. They aren't that high-flying, high-scoring offense, but at the same time, they have a great defense, and they kind of play mistake-free football. I don't know if Alex Smith could ever outduel Tom Brady, but I think a team that plays mistake-free football is something that you need if you're going to beat the Patriots, and I think the Chiefs have that. With all that being said, I think the scary team to watch in the AFC is the Pittsburgh Steelers, simply because I think they match up as well with the Patriots when it comes to star power at the skill positions than any other team in the AFC. You look at quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger has struggled on the road this year, but I think he's a comparable quarterback and the second best quarterback in the AFC playoffs. So as far as someone that can be compared to Brady, I think the Steelers have the edge at running back and at receiver. The only thing that would be a question mark on the offense would be the tight ends. Both have good offensive lines. On defense, I think this is something that the Steelers have definitely played better as of late, and I think it's something that maybe they wouldn't play particularly great against the Patriots, and giving up 27 points to them earlier this year at Heinz Field certainly wasn't the biggest accomplishment, but at the same time, there were spurts in that game when they did play really well, and now that they've played better as of late, I feel like the matchup is a little bit better. On the NFC side, I went a similar route you did, but I ended up picking the Packers over the Giants simply because of the way Aaron Rodgers has played over the past month and a half now. Oh my God, this guy is unbelievable. Just watching him, it feels like he's a man on a mission. It reminds me of that 2010 season when they went in as the 6th seed and won the Super Bowl. The two things you look for a team that's going to the Super Bowl is good defensive play and a hot quarterback. And they definitely have that hot quarterback. If they can beat the Giants, I think they can definitely beat the Packers, or they can beat the Cowboys and go on to the NFC Championship game. As far as one and dones, Austin, we're looking at teams that have made it to the playoffs, but you don't think they're going to win. Who do you think that's going to be on both the AFC and NFC this season?
The AFC was really hard for me because I don't know how the Raiders are without Carr. I mean, we got to see them against Denver last week, but Denver has a really good defense, and now Matt McGloin went down, so now they're stuck with Connor Cook for their quarterback. And I want to pick the Texans because the Texans are just bad, but, they may have it in them to beat the Raiders, who will be starting their rookie quarterback, as I said, Connor Cook. I am going to end up going with the Texans as the one-and-done team. It's really close, but the Raiders still have an excellent team all around, in my opinion. A fantastic offensive line, 2 great wide receivers, great pass-rushing linebackers, a good rookie safety if he starts. I think Carl Joseph has been hurt for a little bit, but I think he might come back for this game. They just have a lot of good spots on this team left, and I'll give it to them. Onto the NFC side, my one-and-done team is Detroit. This was really easy for me. I think Detroit is trash. I don't think they are a good playoff team. I would have rather seen the Redskins make it. I mean, not that the Redskins are any much better, but I think they're better than Detroit. Detroit has just skated on their heels all season, winning 8 games in the fourth quarter comeback. And you could argue that's a fantastic stat, but to me it's awful that they've been down in the fourth quarter so many times and that they've just gotten... I can't say all of them are lucky, but I have to attribute some of those wins to luck. But Detroit doesn't have it in them to make a run against actual decent teams. They also might not even have Darius Slay, their top cornerback for the game. And not to mention the Seahawks are used to being in the postseason the past couple of years. Detroit has been in the playoffs for 2 of the last 4 years, but they aren't as familiar. And I don't like them at all in this postseason. What do you think? Who are your one-and-done teams?
Well, I am going with the same games as you, but I'm going with the opposite opponents. Starting in the AFC, the biggest reason I'm going with the Raiders as my one-and-done team is, like I said, you got to have a decent or good defensive play and a hot quarterback. Well, the Raiders have neither right now. They lost an arguably convincing MVP candidate in Derek Carr. And I didn't think highly of Matt McGloin to start with, and now you're going to be having the first quarterback to make his his NFL debut in a postseason game for a quarterback to start in a postseason game. I think it's really hard to convince me that Connor Cook is going to go out there against the Texans defense that has been pretty good when it comes to scoring, and a defense that has gotten key contributions from players without J.J. Watt this year. I don't see how the Raiders are going to score any points. On the other side of the ball, there aren't many people that dislike Brock Osweiler as a quarterback more than I do, and he will be getting the start with Tom Savage out with a concussion, but at the same point, at least Osweiler can get something done. He has 15 touchdowns this year. Whether or not you think he's a good player at all, which I don't think he is, I believe in him more than I believe in Connor Cook. And on the other side of the ball, the Raiders have had a horrible time stopping the run this year, and that's the one thing the Texans, if they do well, it's run the ball on offense with Lamar Miller. So it's something that I'd be concerned about for the Raiders, and I feel bad for them because they've played really exciting football this year. I thought they might have been the team that could knock out the Patriots, but I think they're a year or two away from being that juggernaut team. On the other side, I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks, and I know you just talked about the Lions and their, I guess, how close they could be to being a team that was horrible and not even close to the playoffs. But I look at the Seahawks, and yeah, they have those key pieces. They have that experience, but this isn't the same Seahawks team that we saw for the last 4 years. I don't see them making a run at all like they traditionally have. The offense is keyed on big plays from Russell Wilson to the wide receiving core and Jimmy Graham. The offensive line may be one of the worst. I think it's the worst offensive line in the playoffs right now. Russell Wilson has been running for his life all season. The running game has been terrible. Christine Michael, who is the leading rusher on this team, is not even on the team. He's not even on the team anymore. Thomas Rawls had, what did he average here? He finished the season with just 3 touchdowns and 349 yards. Granted, he didn't play most of the season, but he averaged just over 3 yards a carry. If you can't run the ball and become one-dimensional in the playoffs, especially with an offensive line that's weak, I think that's just a doomsday scenario for the Seattle Seahawks. And this may have been something that they could come back from with their traditionally strong defense, but they haven't been as good as they have been over the past few years, and they're missing an all-pro in Earl Thomas. That's just, I think it's too much for them to overcome. They're a good team. You don't win 10 games on accident, but at the same point, I just think that this is a game that the Lions can steal from them just because I don't think this is the same Seahawks team we've seen over the last few years. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the playoff picture before we look at it more closely later this week, Austin?
No, just that I would be happy either way. I've let you know, I think I've said on the podcast several times, that I have a genuine hate for the Seahawks. I don't actually hate the Lions. I just think they're way overrated. So if the Lions actually do come out of this, I'd probably be a little happier because I just hate the Seahawks. I have a friend that's a bandwagoner Seahawks fan. He just switched from being a Jets fan like 2 years ago. And it's made me dislike the Seahawks having him around. So I'd be happy however that game comes out, really.
Okay, let me ask you something real quick here. Speaking to you as a fan, if the Steelers don't make the Super Bowl, who are your favorite, like who do you want mostly to go to the Super Bowl and who do you not want to go to the Super Bowl from each side? Like I would go with the, on the AFC side, I'd want the Chiefs to make the Super Bowl and I'd want the Patriots to not make it. On the NFC side, I wouldn't want the Cowboys to make it and I'd like to see the Giants. I'd like to see the Giants again.
I actually completely agree with the AFC side. I don't. It's been Tom Brady or Peyton Manning in the last AFC Super Bowl. So it's just so much. It's them and Ben Roethlisberger. It'd be nice to see if Ben Roethlisberger got eliminated. It'd be nice to see a different face on the AFC side in Alex Smith. I prefer the Chiefs. And then on the other side, it's hard because I'm not really a fan of any of those teams. You know what? I want it to be Green Bay because that'd be really cool. The first Super Bowl ever, quote me if I'm wrong, I believe was between Green Bay and Kansas City.
Indeed it was.
And I think that would be really cool, actually. Because I was thinking, because I don't want to see the Falcons. We went over this after the podcast. I don't want to see the Cowboys. I don't really care for them that much. Giants, I don't want to hear it from Giants fans since, obviously, I'm on Long Island, and that's where most of the Giants fans are concentrated. And it just makes sense for me. And I obviously hate Seattle and don't think Detroit has it in them. So,
you know what? After now that I have had some time to think about it, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and change my answer to the Packers simply because I don't want Eli Manning to get a third ring before Ben Roethlisberger does, and because I'm kind of sick of seeing Aaron Rodgers, his one Super Bowl highlight, and I'm so sick of seeing him just beating the Steelers in that game. So it'd be nice if he got a new Super Bowl and we can see highlights from that game and not Super Bowl 45. But, obviously we'll cover it a little more in depth later this week. Is there anything else real quickly before we wrap things up today?
Nope, that should be it.
All right. Well, to all of our listeners, just wanted to say quickly thank you for joining us for the Stronger Than Steel podcast. This is something we've been doing for, about a little more than half the season now, right?
Mm-hmm. I think like 9 weeks. 8 weeks.
It's something we talked a little bit about in our last episode. We both really enjoyed doing this, and we wanted to thank our listeners for taking the time out of their day to listen to what we have to say and provide us with feedback. And we're glad you joined us for this regular season. We're hoping that we get to do this a little bit longer, hopefully into February. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, we'll get another episode in previewing the Steelers matchup with the Miami Dolphins, a potential revenge game for the Steelers. But until then, if you have any questions about the show or you want to email us with feedback, our email is strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. We are on SoundCloud. We usually post our episodes there first. We're just Stronger Than Steel podcast, Stronger Than Steel podcast on YouTube as well. That's where we have our full library of videos, or I guess in this case, audio podcasts on YouTube. And we are on Twitter and Facebook too. Our handle is STS Podcast 1. We usually live tweet the games and post our episodes there from SoundCloud as well. So, Austin, I will talk to you later. Everyone have a fantastic day and go Steelers.